Stop. If you believe that the truth, especially in the hands of courageous children, can dismantle a powerful empire built on lies, then hit the subscribe button and like this video right now. Comment below with the city you're listening from and prepare to be amazed. The Quintuple Revolution. Truth versus the Crown Empire. Imagine being erased from history, not just from a man's life, but from his memory itself. Octavia Ramirez, a beautiful, struggling single mother, was abandoned and left pregnant by the man who vowed to love her. That man was Alexander Alex Sterling, an heir to the formidable Sterling Global Holdings, an empire of power, fame, and unimaginable wealth. Alex had it all, but he forgot the only thing that truly mattered. He had 5 small hearts waiting for him, 5 children he didn't know existed, 5 perfect mirrors of his own face. When the truth resurfaces, not through a lawyer's brief, but through the brilliant, determined hands of the children themselves, it ignites a battle against a corporate dynasty fueled by manipulated memories, silent blackmail, a kidnapping attempt, and a stunning revelation that will forever change the future of one of America's most powerful families. This is the story of how 5 little voices dared to challenge a lie a decade in the making. The small, chipped bathroom mirror didn't lie. Octavia Tavi Rocha ran trembling fingers across her forehead, pushing back a lock of brown hair that insisted on falling into her eyes. The home pregnancy test, with its 2 unmistakable pink lines, seemed to mock her from the rim of the cracked porcelain sink. "Oh Lord," she whispered, her legs suddenly weak. She sank onto the toilet lid, breathing deeply to fight the nausea that washed over her. This was supposed to be a moment of joy. She and Alex had talked about children, about the future they would build together. Just 2 weeks ago, he had knelt before her in her tiny, rented apartment in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, with a simple yet elegant ring, promising he would finally introduce her to his family, promising he would stand up to the Sterling Empire for her. Now, Alex Sterling had been missing for 5 days. Phone off, apartment empty, messages unanswered. As if the earth had swallowed him whole. Tavi's family home in the heart of the Bronx had never felt as suffocating as it did that night. Sitting at the kitchen table, she revealed her pregnancy and Alex's disappearance to her parents. "I told you! I told you!" Don Miguel's voice boomed through the kitchen, his construction worker hands slamming the table. "These rich folks are no good. 3 years hiding you like you were an embarrassment, and you still believed his marriage promise." "Miguel, calm down," interceded Doña Sofia, Tavi's mother, placing a comforting hand on her daughter's shoulder. "The girl is hurting enough." "Hurting is an understatement. Now she's raising a child alone. Do you know what happens to a decent girl when she has a child without a father? She becomes the neighborhood joke." "I'm going to find him," Tavi declared, wiping away a stubborn tear. "Something is wrong. Alex wouldn't do this to me." "Daughter, wake up. The boy didn't even introduce you to his family in 3 years. He was playing you." The argument continued late into the night. The next morning, determined to find answers, Tavi took the subway to Midtown. The Sterling Global Holdings skyscraper was an imposing tower of mirrored glass that reflected the gray New York sky. In the luxurious lobby, the receptionist scrutinized her, noting the simple cotton dress and worn shoes. "May I help you?" she asked with cold courtesy. "I need to speak with Alexander Sterling. It's urgent." The receptionist raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Mr. Sterling is unavailable. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but—" Tavi took a deep breath. "I'm his fiancée. I need to find him urgently." The ensuing silence was sharp. The receptionist looked at her as if she had said something absurd, then smiled condescendingly. "Ma'am, Mr. Sterling has been engaged to Miss Victoria Vance, the banking heiress, for 3 months now. Their engagement party made the cover of every society magazine." The words hit Tavi like a punch to the stomach. "That's impossible! He proposed to me 2 weeks ago!" "I'm sorry, but I must ask you to leave before I have to call security," Tavi insisted, her voice rising, drawing the attention of passing executives. That was when a man in an impeccable suit and receding gray hair approached. Is there a problem here? The deep, authoritative voice made the receptionist immediately straighten up. Dr. Alistair, this young lady claims to be your son's fiancée. The cold, gray-blue eyes of the Sterling family patriarch studied Tavi with calculated indifference. She immediately recognized those eyes. They were Alex's. My son has been in London for a month, preparing to take over our European office after his marriage, he stated without emotion. I don't know who you are or what you want, but I suggest you end this farce before I take legal action. It's not a farce. I have all the texts, the photos. Tavi frantically searched for her cell phone. We've been together for 3 years. He has a crescent-shaped birthmark on his right shoulder. He's allergic to peanuts and terrified of heights. How would I know those things? A shadow of something indefinable crossed the man's face. Security, he called softly. Escort this young lady out, and ensure she doesn't bother us again. Tears blurred her vision as she was escorted out of the building. On the sidewalk of the busy avenue, Tavi felt the world spin. Her cell phone vibrated with a message from her father. Don't come home until you resolve this embarrassment. I don't want lying daughters under my roof. The days that followed turned into a nightmare. Unable to return home and with few resources, Tavi slept in shelters, then on park benches, struggling to survive while her body housed a life, or lives, as she would discover 2 months later, when an ultrasound revealed not 1, but 5 small heartbeats. It was on a bench in Central Park, almost passing out from hunger, that Mrs. Elena found her, a kindly, dark-haired woman in her 60s, wearing a colorful shawl and a determined expression. Child, you look terrible, she said, offering a bottle of water. How long since you've eaten properly? Tavi could barely speak. The weeks on the streets had drained her strength. Mrs. Elena asked no more questions. She simply helped her up and took her to the St. Bartholomew's Episcopal Church in Harlem, where she volunteered as a caretaker. I can't pay you back, Tavi murmured when the woman offered her a small room in the back of the church. The Lord has already paid for us all, Mrs. Elena simply replied. Now eat and rest. We'll talk tomorrow. It was under the roof of that small church that Tavi finally found some peace. With the support of Mrs. Elena and the local community, she got a part-time job cleaning. The nights, however, were filled with silent tears and unanswered questions. How could Alex do this to her? Why did he lie for so long? What had truly happened? The multiple pregnancy was extremely difficult. In the 6th month, Tavi had to quit her job, confined to almost total bed rest. When doctors at the city clinic suggested fetal reduction to increase the survival chances of the other babies, she vehemently refused. They will all be born, she declared with a determination that surprised even herself. And they will live. The story of the young woman pregnant with quintuplets, living in the back of the church, spread throughout the neighborhood. Soon, small donations began to arrive. Baby clothes, diapers, a used chest of drawers. Mrs. Elena organized a charity bazaar that raised enough money to buy 5 simple cribs. When she completed her 8th month, Tavi woke up in the middle of the night with sharp pains. Mrs. Elena rushed her to Harlem Hospital. The next 48 hours were a blur of running doctors, beeping monitors, and the constant fear of losing the babies. When she finally opened her eyes after the emergency C-section, the world looked different. 5 tiny, premature but fierce beings had been taken to the NICU. 2 needed respiratory support in the first hours. They are warriors, just like their mother, the nurse said when Tavi finally got to see them 3 days later. 3 boys and 2 girls, all beautiful. Tavi looked at those tiny faces, each a perfect blend of her and Alex. All 5 had the same fair skin, and it was clear they would have their father's light hair. Even so small, the aristocratic features of the Sterling lineage were visible. Ethan Michael, she murmured, gently touching the first baby. Gabriel Henry, she continued to the second. Lucas Raphael, Theodore Emmanuel. And finally, the girl who was born last, the smallest of all, but with a surprising vigor in her lungs when she cried. Aurora Elena. Beautiful names, commented Mrs. Elena, watching the scene with tear-filled eyes. They're going to be a handful, aren't they? Tavi smiled, feeling something beyond pain for the first time in months. Yes, but they are my family now. The first years were a constant test of resilience. Tavi rarely slept more than 3 hours a night. Between feedings, diaper changes, and night crying, she used any free moment to knit, a skill learned from her mother that now became her main source of income. Mrs. Elena helped during the day, while Tavi cleaned houses in the area. When the quintuplets turned 2, Tavi finally managed to rent a small 2-bedroom apartment in the outskirts of the Bronx. The walls were peeling, the ceiling leaked, but it was theirs, a place to raise her children with dignity. As they grew, the personality differences between the 5 siblings sharpened. Ethan, the quietest, observed everything with his father's same penetrating eyes. Gabriel was restless, always questioning, exploring every corner of the house. Lucas was a chatterbox from an early age, charming neighbors with his fluent speech. Theodore surprised everyone with his ease of learning. At 3, he already knew the full alphabet. Aurora, however, was special. The youngest of the 5 had a fierce determination that sometimes even frightened Tavi. When contradicted, her blue eyes grew stormy like the sky before a major tempest. "That girl is going places," Mrs. Elena would comment, watching the little one methodically arrange her dolls by size. She has fire in her gaze. Despite all the financial difficulties, Tavi never allowed her children to lack love or education. In the hours between cleaning and knitting, she taught them basic math, reading, and even English, using free videos on the internet. Instead of expensive toys, she created educational games with recycled materials. "Why doesn't our daddy ever visit us?" Aurora asked one night when they were 5. The children shared a single room with 3 cramped bunk beds. Tavi froze in the middle of the bedtime story. She had prepared a softened version of the truth for when this moment came. "Your father. He lives very far away. He doesn't know where we are. Can we look for him?" suggested Theodore, ever the practical one. "One day," Tavi replied vaguely. "Now it's time to sleep." But the questions didn't cease as the years passed. As the quintuplets grew and entered school, the differences between them and the other children became more evident. Their refined features, above-average intelligence, and the polite demeanor Tavi insisted on cultivating made them stand out in the peripheral school environment. "They look nothing like you," one of the teachers once commented during a parent meeting. "The father must be very handsome." Tavi just smiled politely, swallowing the pain that never completely left her. In recent years, she had tried a few times to find Alex, discovering through online news that he had, in fact, married Victoria Vance, the heiress of a traditional banking family. The latest information indicated they were living in London, where he was managing the European subsidiary of the family businesses. Meanwhile, Tavi reinvented herself. Cleaning jobs gave way to a small catering business, delivering quick meals to local offices. Late into the night, she studied online, determined to get a college degree. The small house was gradually improved, a bathroom renovated here, a fresh coat of paint there, second-hand furniture lovingly restored. When the quintuplets turned 7, an incident changed the course of their lives. During a computer class at the public school, a news report about the most promising young executives in the U.S. appeared on the screen Theodore was using. The face of Alexander Sterling, smiling and confident, was there, alongside the news of his return to New York to assume the presidency of the family businesses. "Mom, look who looks like Theo when he grows up," Lucas exclaimed when they returned home, showing the image he had printed at school. Tavi felt the blood freeze in her veins. The resemblance was undeniable. Theodore was practically a miniature version of Alex, with the same penetrating eyes and determined chin. "Who is he, Mom?" Aurora asked, studying Tavi's reaction with her discerning eyes. "No one important," Tavi replied, putting the paper away. But it was too late. Aurora had seen the name in the report, and her sharp mind would soon connect the dots. That night, after the children were asleep, Tavi cried silently in the kitchen. Alex was back in New York, After 8 years, he would again be breathing the same air as her, walking the same streets. The pain she thought was dormant returned with full force. She didn't know it, but in the next room, Aurora wasn't sleeping. Sitting up in bed with an improvised flashlight made from a water bottle, the girl was searching on the old donation cell phone. Alexander Sterling Executive. The information she found left her stunned but determined. The matter seemed closed, but 3 weeks later, Aurora approached her mother while Tavi was preparing Sunday lunch, the only day she didn't work. "Mom, is this man our father?" she asked directly, showing a photo of Alex on her phone. "The boys and I did some research. He has the same last name you sometimes say in your sleep. And we look a lot like him." Tavi dropped the spoon she was holding, the shock evident on her face. All 5 were there, in the small kitchen, looking at her expectantly. "Sit down," she finally said, accepting defeat. "It's time you knew the truth." She told them everything. The secret romance, the marriage proposal, the sudden disappearance, the Sterling family's denial, the nights on the streets until she found Mrs. Elena. She spoke of the struggle to raise them alone, of the doors she had knocked on for help. "Why did he abandon us?" Gabriel asked, his small hands clenched into fists. "I don't know for sure," Tavi replied honestly. "Maybe he gave in to family pressure. Maybe he just changed his mind about us." "Does he know we exist?" It was Ethan's turn, always quiet, but now his eyes were bright with contained emotion. "No, by the time I found out about you, he had already disappeared." Aurora, who had remained strangely silent, finally spoke. "We need to show him who we are." "No, honey," Tavi shook her head emphatically. "The Sterlings are powerful. They would destroy us." "We're going to prove who we are, Mom," Aurora countered, her chin raised in defiance. "The truth can't stay hidden forever." That conversation marked the beginning of a transformation. The Quintuplets, always close, now had a common purpose. Tavi noticed how they whispered to each other in the corners of the house, how they exchanged meaningful glances during dinner. Theodore spent hours at the public library researching paternity laws. Lucas used his natural charm to extract information from adults. Gabriel meticulously observed everything. Ethan, the shy one, now spoke about justice with a surprising conviction. Aurora, however, was the undisputed leader. At 8, she already showed an emotional intelligence and strategic capacity that was startling. "We're going to need proof, Mom," she declared one day, sitting at the kitchen table while doing homework. "Do you have anything that proves you were together?" Tavi hesitated. In the back of her closet, tucked away in a shoebox, was a folder with all the memories of Alex she had managed to preserve. Photos, letters, a simple engagement ring, and one document. "I have a certificate of engagement," she admitted. Alex insisted on registering it with the city clerk, even though it was symbolic at the time. He said that way I'd believe he was serious. Aurora's eyes shone. "That's all we need." The next morning at school, Aurora approached her computer teacher, Mr. Robinson, with an unusual question for an 8-year-old. "Sir, how does someone prove they are the child of a rich person who doesn't want to acknowledge them?" Mr. Robinson, a young man with ideals of social justice and a certain resentment toward the elites, looked at the girl with curiosity. In the following months, he would become a crucial ally in the small Roca's quest for justice. Tavi's life and the lives of her 5 children were about to change forever. What she didn't know was that while they were planning their next move, just a few miles away, in the luxurious office of Sterling Global Holdings, Alex was looking out the window at the New York skyline, troubled by recurring dreams of a brown-haired woman whose name he couldn't quite recall. Audience interaction. If you were Tavi, facing a powerful enemy who has manipulated your loved one's memory, would you risk your children's safety to demand the truth in a very public, scandalous way? Tell us, yes, fight fire with fire, or no, protect the children at all costs. The sun had barely risen when Aurora woke her brothers. The 5 shared a single room, with old bunk beds and a chipped wooden dresser that held all their clothes. "Get up," she whispered, nudging Theodore first. He was always the hardest to wake. "We have work to do." In recent months, Mr. Robinson had become more than an ally. He was practically an accomplice. Thanks to him, the Quintuplets had gained access to the school's computer lab outside regular hours, under the pretext of a special project. "What are we going to do today?" Lucas asked, always talkative, even in the early hours of the morning. "We're going to assemble our dossier," Aurora replied, pulling a green folder from under her mattress where they kept all the information collected about the Sterling family. "Mr. Robinson is going to help us digitize Mom's documents." Tavi slept on the sofa in the small living room, exhausted after a long day of catering deliveries, followed by a night of studying for her final exam for her nursing technician course. The Quintuplets moved silently through the house, accustomed to looking after each other and sparing their mother whenever possible. "Don't you guys think this could go wrong?" questioned Ethan, the most cautious of the five. "What if they hurt Mom again?" Aurora looked at her brother with determination in her blue eyes. "That's why we're preparing so much. We're not just going to show up, we're going with everything planned." At school, Mr. Robinson waited for them in the empty lab. At 32, the son of a domestic worker who had earned his computer science degree through immense effort, Robinson held a critical view of social inequalities. When Aurora first told him the story, he saw in it not just an injustice to be corrected, but an opportunity to expose the hypocrisy of the capitalist elite. "Did you bring the documents?" he asked as he turned on the computers. Theodore, the most organized, carefully handed him the folder. "Everything is here. The certificate of engagement, the photos, even the old pregnancy test result." "Excellent. We'll scan everything in high resolution and create digital backups. You never know what might happen to the originals." While the teacher worked, the five watched intently. Gabriel, curious as ever, asked questions about every step of the process. Lucas already imagined the confrontation, narrating epic scenarios in which the Roca Quintuplets, as he liked to call them, triumphed over the villainous Sterlings. Ethan and Theodore remained silent, absorbing every detail, calculating risks, thinking of contingencies. Aurora, however, was one step ahead. "Professor, I found something interesting about Dad," she said, showing him her phone screen. "According to this news from 3 years ago, he suffered a serious accident. He was in a coma for 3 weeks. Robinson leaned closer to read. "Sterling heir sustains injuries in New England accident. Interesting, that might explain some things." "Like what?" questioned Theodore, always analytical. "If there was brain trauma, it might have affected his memory," Robinson explained. "Or maybe it was a perfect opportunity for the family to manipulate his recollections, to keep him away from your mother." The idea was disturbing, but it made sense. For years, Tavi had questioned how Alex could simply abandon her when his love seemed so sincere. The possibility of external manipulation offered a less painful explanation than simple rejection. In the days that followed, the Quintuplets intensified their research. They discovered that Alex had divorced Victoria Vance 2 years after their marriage, that he had taken over the family presidency after his father, Alistair Sterling, suffered a heart attack, that he had a reputation as a workaholic, rarely seen at social events. "He looks sad," commented Ethan, observing the rare recent photos of Alex they found in business magazines. "Like something is missing." Tavi began to notice the changes in her children. The five had always been studious and disciplined, but now they showed an almost obsessive focus. When she asked about the school project they were developing, she received vague answers about social research. It was one Saturday morning, while separating the laundry, that Tavi found the green folder hidden among the school books. Her heart raced as she saw her own young face next to Alex's in photos she hadn't seen in years. The certificate of engagement, yellowed with time, bore the elegant signature of the man who still occasionally populated her dreams. "What is this?" she asked when the children returned from the corner grocery store. The five exchanged glances, a silent communication only multiples seemed capable of maintaining. It was Aurora who stepped forward. "We're gathering proof, Mom," she said with the determination of an adult in a child's body, "to show our father who we are." Tavi's face went pale. "I told you not to do this. The Sterlings are dangerous." "We already know everything about them," Theodore calmly replied. "About Grandpa Alistair, who controls everything. About Aunt Clarice, who's a doctor. About Uncle Philip, who works abroad. And we know Dad had an accident," Gabriel completed. "Maybe he doesn't remember you." Tavi sat on the worn sofa, her legs suddenly weak. "You don't understand, it's not that simple." "We understand more than you think, Mom," Lucas said, sitting beside her. "We know you still have the ring he gave you, that you still cry sometimes looking at that box in your closet. And we know we deserve the truth," Aurora concluded, her blue eyes fixed on her mother's. "It's not fair that we live like this when our father has so much. We don't want his money. We just want him to know we exist." Tavi looked at the 5 determined faces in front of her. They were no longer helpless babies. They were intelligent, sharp children who had inherited as much from her as from Alex. Her determination, his intelligence, the courage of both. "How do you plan to do this?" she finally asked, accepting defeat. In the days that followed, Tavi was included in the plan. With her life experience and knowledge about Alex, she could provide valuable details. Her initial reluctance gradually turned into cautious hope. What if Alex truly hadn't abandoned her willingly? What if there was an explanation? Mr. Robinson introduced them to his cousin, attorney James Robinson, a newly graduated lawyer working on social justice cases. Initially skeptical, James changed his mind upon examining the evidence, and especially after meeting the Quintuplets. "I've never seen children like that," he commented to Mr. Robinson after their first meeting. "They talk like adults, reason like strategists, and the resemblance to Sterling is undeniable." On the Quintuplets' 9th birthday, Tavi made an extraordinary effort to give them a special party. She had saved for months to buy individual gifts that reflected each personality: a chess set for Theodore, a small used digital camera for Lucas, a science kit for Gabriel, a quality sketchbook and pencils for Ethan, and for Aurora, a refurbished tablet a neighbor sold her at cost price. During the modest celebration, with a cake baked by Tavi herself and the presence of Mrs. Elena, Mr. Robinson, and a few schoolmates, Aurora made an unexpected announcement. "In 1 month, we're going to meet our father." Tavi nearly dropped the tray of cupcakes. "How so, Aurora? We didn't agree on that." "There's an event on Park Avenue," Theodore explained. "The inauguration of the new Sterling Global Holdings headquarters. The whole family will be there along with the press. It's our best chance," Gabriel completed. "In public, they won't be able to ignore us or threaten us." The plan was bold, but meticulously thought out. With attorney James's help, they prepared certified copies of the documents. Mr. Robinson secured fake press passes so they could enter the event. Mrs. Elena recruited members of her church to be present for moral support and as witnesses. "This is insane," Tavi muttered as she helped the children get ready. With borrowed money and clothes bought from a consignment shop, the 5 looked like they were straight out of a children's fashion catalog. Miniature executives, with well-fitting suits for the boys and an elegant dress for Aurora. "That's why it will work," Aurora replied with a confident smile. "No one expects children to do something like this." On the eve of the big day, Tavi woke up in the middle of the night with a strange premonition. She went to check on her children and found Aurora awake, sitting by the window, looking at the starry sky rarely visible through New York's pollution. "Can't sleep?" Tavi asked, sitting down beside her daughter. "I'm thinking about Dad," Aurora replied. "How do you think he's going to react?" "I don't know, my love," Tavi admitted. "But no matter what happens, I want you to know that I am incredibly proud of you. Of all of you." Aurora leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "We're doing this for you too, you know? So you don't have to work so hard." Tavi felt her eyes fill with tears. "I work hard because I love you. I've never regretted choosing you, not even in the darkest moments." The tension was palpable on the morning of the big day. The Quintuplets dressed carefully, helping each other with ties and hairstyles. Tavi, at Aurora's insistence, also dressed up. The navy blue dress, bought on sale years ago and saved for special occasions, highlighted her eyes and did justice to the beauty that years of hard work hadn't managed to completely erase. "You look beautiful, Mom," said Ethan, the quietest but most observant. Tavi smiled nervously. She didn't plan to go near the building. She would stay at a distance, ready to intervene only if necessary. The confrontation would be led by Aurora, with her brothers as support. Attorney James would be nearby, as would Mr. Robinson, and a few other strategically positioned allies. The plan was simple in theory. Enter the inauguration cocktail party using the forged passes, approach Alex when he was in public, present the evidence, and demand recognition. In practice, there were 1,000 variables that could go wrong. Park Avenue was especially crowded that Thursday afternoon, in front of the new Sterling Global Holdings building, an imposing structure of glass and steel that rose 30 stories above street level. Security guards in suits controlled the entry of guests. Journalists clustered near the entrance, awaiting the arrival of important personalities. "Remember the plan," Aurora said quietly as they walked toward the building. Theodore and Gabriel enter first with Attorney James, pretending to be his sons. Lucas and Ethan enter afterward with the press passes Mr. Robinson secured. I enter last, alone. "Are you sure you don't want me to go with you?" Tavi asked, her heart pounding with fear. "Yes, Mom," Aurora replied firmly. "If you show up now, they'll recognize you and block you immediately. We are new, they don't know us." Tavi hugged each of her children, trying to hold back tears. "Be careful. If anything goes wrong, get out of there immediately. Attorney James will be watching you." The plan began to unfold. Theodore and Gabriel entered without issue with Attorney James, who had a legitimate invitation obtained through law school contacts. Lucas and Ethan, with their forged junior press assistant credentials, also managed to pass, blending in with a group of photographers. Aurora waited a few minutes, observing. Her heart was beating hard, but her expression was one of absolute calm. At 9 years old, she carried a folder with documents and a determination rarely seen in adults, let alone children. "Can I help you, little one?" a security guard asked when she finally approached the entrance. "I'm looking for my dad," she replied with the most innocent voice she could muster. "He works here." "What's his name?" Aurora looked directly into the man's eyes. "Alexander Sterling," the guard laughed. "Sure, and I'm Santa Claus. Go play somewhere else, kid." "She's with me," a female voice intervened. A young TV reporter approached. "She's my niece. She got separated from her parents." Aurora shot a look of gratitude at the woman, one of the allies recruited by Mr. Robinson, and entered the luxurious lobby of the building. The lobby was packed with elegantly dressed people, champagne glasses in hand, artificial laughter echoing off the marble walls. The 4 brothers were already strategically positioned, as planned. Theodore near the buffet, Gabriel near the stairs, Lucas circulating discreetly with his cell phone, ready to record. And Ethan, the most observant, kept his eyes on the main entrance awaiting Alex's arrival. It was Lucas who spotted him first. "Target in sight," he murmured into the small walkie-talkie they shared. Cheap but functional toys for short distances. Alexander Sterling entered the lobby, accompanied by a group of executives. At 38, he was at the height of his physical form and corporate power. His impeccably tailored suit accentuated his aristocratic posture, his light hair carefully combed back, the same gray-blue eyes the Quintuplets had inherited. "It's our cue," Aurora said into the device. "Everyone in position." The 5 began to move like chess pieces, gradually converging on Alex, who was interrupted mid-sentence while talking to a group of investors near the main staircase. Alex stopped, startled by the sudden appearance of 5 identical children looking directly at him. A strange silence fell over the closest group. Cameras instinctively turned toward the unusual scene. "Excuse me," Aurora said in a loud, clear voice. "My name is Aurora Elena Rocha. These are my brothers, Ethan Michael, Gabriel Henry, Lucas Raphael, and Theodore Emmanuel. We are your children, Mr. Sterling." Alex's face became a mask of shock. His eyes swept over the 5 faces in front of him, lingering on the features that were mirrors of his own. The same eyes, the same face shape, even the small dimple on the chin that Aurora and Theodore had inherited. "What are you talking about?" he finally managed to say, his voice husky with surprise. Aurora opened the folder she was carrying, pulling out the certificate of engagement. 10 years ago, you asked our mother, Octavia Rocha, to marry you. Then you disappeared without explanation. She was pregnant with quintuplets, us. The camera flashes intensified. Journalists pressed closer, sensing the bombshell story unfolding before them. Security guards began to move but hesitated, unsure how to act against children. "This is absurd," interjected an older man, whom Aurora immediately recognized from photos as Alistair Sterling, the family patriarch. "Get these children out of here immediately." "We have proof," Theodore replied, stepping forward beside his sister. "Preliminary DNA tests, documents, photos. We just want our father to know we exist." Alex seemed hypnotized, his gaze fixed on Aurora, who held his eye contact without flinching. Something in those eyes, the same ones he saw in the mirror every morning, seemed to awaken dormant memories. "Octavia," he murmured, more to himself than to the others. It was then that an elegant woman, whom Aurora identified as Constance Sterling, the family matriarch, rushed over. Seeing the quintuplets lined up, her face lost all color. Without saying a word, the woman in her late 60s collapsed to the floor in a sudden faint. Chaos erupted. Guards rushed to assist Constance, while Alistair shouted orders to remove those imposters from the premises. Journalists jockeyed for space to photograph the scene while guests watched open-mouthed. "Take the children to my office," Alex suddenly ordered, his voice taking on a commanding tone that silenced even his father. "All of them. And call security to prevent any journalist from following them." The quintuplets exchanged triumphant glances. Phase 1 of the plan. Complete. They were inside. Meanwhile, across the street, Tavi watched everything through Mr. Robinson's cell phone, which was live-streaming the images captured by Lucas. Her heart hammered so hard it felt about to break. After 9 years, the truth was finally beginning to emerge. What she didn't know was that in the luxurious Sterling penthouse, an emergency meeting was already being convened by phone. Victoria Sterling, Alex's cousin and family lawyer, was mobilizing a team to contain the growing scandal. And at Massachusetts General Hospital, a specialist in post-traumatic amnesia was receiving an urgent call from Dr. Philip Sterling, Alex's uncle and the family doctor, requesting absolute secrecy about the memory reconstruction case performed years ago. The war for the recognition of the Rocha quintuplets had officially begun, and no one, not even Aurora, with her impressive foresight, could foresee how dirty that battle would become. Meaningful ending. Fan 1. The silence in the ultra-modern office was broken by Alexander's simple question. "What did you do to me?" The answer, a decade of lies, a stolen memory, and the threat of an empire's collapse, would redefine what the Sterling name truly stood for. The fight for patrimony had begun, but the real prize was the truth. Don't go anywhere. The stunning conclusion is coming right up. The final battle for memory and family. Alex Sterling's private office occupied the entire top floor of the new building. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of New York City, the city of contrasts stretching as far as the eye could see. The quintuplets, now seated on a set of Italian leather sofas, seemed like small islands of dignity in an ocean of luxury. "You really planned this well," Alex said, standing in front of the window, his back to the children. His voice sounded strangely controlled, almost clinical. "You chose the most visible event of the year. You made sure the press was present." "We needed to be heard," Aurora replied calmly. "Your family has ignored us for 9 years." Alex turned to face the 5. His gaze rested on each face for a few seconds, as if trying to absorb every detail. "If what you say is true, I didn't know you existed." "Our mother tried to find you," Theodore said, maintaining the respectful yet firm tone they had rehearsed. "She came to this very building. Your father sent her away, saying you were in London." A shadow of uncertainty crossed Alex's face. "When exactly was that?" 10 years ago, Gabriel replied. "In August." Something seemed to stir in Alex's memory. He walked slowly to his desk and picked up a photograph frame, face down. It was the only visible personal object in the minimalist office. "You look like me when I was a child," he finally said. "But that doesn't prove anything. We'll need DNA tests. We already have preliminary results." Lucas pulled another document from the folder. "Attorney James Robinson, our lawyer, managed to get hair samples from a brush my mother kept. It's not admissible in court, but it shows a 99.8% probability of paternity." Alex raised an eyebrow, surprised by the children's organization and preparation. "Who is your mother, really? Is someone guiding you?" "Our mother is Octavia Rocha," Ethan replied, speaking for the first time. "She works as a nurse and makes catering meals to supplement her income. She has raised us alone, without any help, and we were the ones who planned all this," Aurora completed, "with small assists from adults who believed in us." The office door burst open. Alistair Sterling stormed in, followed by Victoria, the lawyer cousin, and 2 large security guards. "This ends now," the patriarch declared. "These children will be removed from the building immediately, and we will deal with this farce through the appropriate channels." "They're not going anywhere, Dad," Alex replied, with a firmness that was surprising. "Not until we clarify this situation." "What's there to clarify? It's obviously an extortion attempt." Aurora stood up, her blue eyes fixed on the man who was her grandfather. "We don't want your money, Mr. Sterling. We want the truth, and we want our father." "Insolent!" Alistair took a step toward the girl, but Alex placed himself between them. "That's enough, Dad." Alex's voice took on a tone no one in the room had heard before. "Something isn't right here. I have flashes of memory, a brown-haired woman, an apartment in the Lower East Side." Victoria exchanged a worried look with Alistair. "Alex, you're confused. Remember what the doctors said about false memories after the accident?" "What accident?" Theodore immediately asked, his sharp gaze catching the tension in the room. "It's none of your business, brat," Alistair snapped. 3 years ago, I had an accident," Alex explained, ignoring his father's warning glare. "I was in a coma for 3 weeks. I lost some memory of the previous years." Aurora and Theodore exchanged significant glances. It was exactly as they had suspected. "Stop this nonsense," Alistair interrupted. "Victoria, handle this. I want these brats and their supposed lawyer out of my building in 5 minutes." "We're not going anywhere without our father," Gabriel declared, his childish voice firm. Alistair laughed without humor. "Who do you think you are to challenge me, young man? I am Gabriel Henry Rocha, grandson of Don Miguel Rocha and Doña Sofia Rocha. My great-grandfather was Don Antonio Rocha, who helped build this very building as a construction worker in 1972 without ever receiving proper labor rights." The look on Alistair's face was priceless. Aurora smiled. The meticulous research they had done on the history of the first Sterling building was paying off. "Where did you get that information?" Victoria demanded, her professional composure momentarily shaken. "Public records," Theodore simply replied. "It's amazing what you can find when you know where to look." The tension in the room was palpable. It was then that the door opened again, revealing Attorney James Robinson, now accompanied by 2 clerks. "Pardon the interruption," the young lawyer said with a confidence bordering on arrogance. "I have here a court order demanding the preservation of all evidence related to the case, including Mr. Alexander Sterling's medical records concerning the period of his accident." "How did you get that so fast?" Victoria asked, clearly disturbed. "We already had the petition prepared," James replied with a polite smile. "We just needed the right trigger. Thank you for mentioning the accident and the false memories." While the legal battle began to unfold in the office, a new drama was forming in the building's lobby. Tavi, unable to bear the weight any longer, had entered the building, simply dressed but with a natural dignity that no expensive clothing could confer. She drew curious glances from the guests who had not yet left the venue. "I need to see my children," she told the security guard who tried to block her. "Ma'am, we have no record of any authorized children at the event," the man replied, visibly uncomfortable with the growing interest of the journalists still circulating in the lobby. "My 5 children are in Alexander Sterling's office," Tavi insisted, "and if you don't let me go up immediately, I'm going to tell every one of these reporters exactly why." The guard hesitated, aware of the escalating commotion. He was saved by the appearance of Mr. Robinson, who approached accompanied by a reporter from a major news outlet. "This is the children's mother," Mr. Robinson explained to the journalist. "The woman Alexander Sterling abandoned 10 years ago when he found out she was pregnant." Cameras began flashing. Sensing the situation was spiraling out of control, the guard finally gave in. "30th floor, but I'll escort you." In the elevator, Tavi tried to calm her racing heart. It wasn't part of the plan for her to show up so early. Aurora had been emphatic. "Only come when we call you, Mom. We need him to see us first, to know us without prejudice." But fear for her children's safety spoke louder. When the elevator doors opened on the 30th floor, Tavi was met with a surreal scene. The door to Alex's office was open, revealing an intense confrontation between the Sterlings, the clerks, and Attorney James. The Quintuplets remained seated on the sofa, watching everything with an impressive calm for children their age. "Mom!" Lucas exclaimed upon seeing her, running toward her. The other four followed, forming a protective circle around her. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. All eyes turned toward the brown-haired woman with green eyes who stood in the doorway, surrounded by 5 children. Alex took a step forward, his face pale as if he had seen a ghost. "Octavia!" His voice, speaking her name after so many years, made Tavi tremble. "Hello, Alex. This is ridiculous," Alistair exploded. "Now they're going to tell us this is the supposed mother of those children, the swindler who claims to have had a relationship with my son." "It's not a claim, Mr. Sterling," Tavi replied calmly. "We were together for 3 years. Your son asked me to marry him. 2 weeks later, he disappeared." "Lie. Alex was in Europe at that time, preparing to take over our London office." "No, Dad." Alex's voice sounded strangely distant. "I recognize her. I remember her." Alistair paled. "Impossible. The doctors guaranteed those memories were completely suppressed." The comment escaped like an accidental shot, revealing more than he intended. Attorney James immediately signaled to the clerks, who began taking notes. "What memories were suppressed, Mr. Sterling, and by which doctors exactly?" The patriarch realized his mistake, but it was too late. The expression on Alex's face gradually shifted from confusion to horrified understanding. "What did you do to me?" he asked, facing his father. "The accident wasn't an accident, was it?" "Alex, you're confused," Victoria quickly intervened. "This is exactly what they want, to plant doubts, to manipulate your fragmented memories." But Alex was no longer listening to her. His eyes were fixed on Tavi, as if trying to rescue every piece of memory through that gaze. "You had an apartment in the Lower East Side," he said slowly. "Small, with a balcony where you grew orchids. You had a cat named Frida. You liked Jose's music and dreamed of opening a small nursing clinic in your neighborhood." Silent tears began to run down Tavi's face. "You remember?" "Not completely. They're flashes, fragments." Alex ran a hand through his hair, clearly distraught. "Why can't I remember everything? What did you do to me?" It was Aurora who replied, her childish voice carrying a wisdom beyond her years. "They manipulated your memories, Dad. They took advantage of the accident to reprogram you, like a computer being reset." "Absurd!" Alistair exclaimed, but the trembling in his voice betrayed his nervousness. "That girl is inventing conspiracy theories." "Then you won't mind releasing your son's complete medical records," challenged Attorney James, including the names of all the specialists who treated him during the coma and recovery. The tension in the room was cutting. Alex slowly approached Tavi, studying her face as if seeking answers to questions he didn't even know how to ask. "I looked for you," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "When I found out I was pregnant, I came here. Your father said you were in Europe, that he had never heard of me." "I was somewhere," Alex replied, fragments of memory surfacing in his mind. "An isolated place. A clinic, maybe. I remember doctors, injections. I thought it was to treat depression." Alistair suddenly changed tactics. "Fine. There was a relationship, a fling, but you were confused, Alex. You were going through a rebellious phase, rejecting your responsibilities to the family. So you admit you knew Octavia Rocha?" Attorney James immediately pressed. "I knew her well enough to know she wasn't suitable for my son," Alistair replied, his tone now deliberately condescending. A girl of humble origins, without formal education, pursuing the heir to one of the largest fortunes in the U.S., the classic scenario. Tavi took a step forward, her voice firm despite the tears. I was in my last year of nursing school when I met him. I worked to pay for my studies. Alex sought me out, not the other way around. We fell in love. Something in Tavi's conviction seemed to touch Alex deeply. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if struggling to organize the flashes of memory assaulting his mind. The ring, he murmured suddenly. I gave you a sapphire ring. It wasn't expensive, but it was your maternal grandmother's, Tavi completed. You said that she would want it to go to someone who valued its meaning, not its material worth. The face of Constance Sterling, who had been watching everything silently from across the room after recovering from her faint, shifted into a mask of shock. My mother's ring? You gave it to her? I think, yes, Alex replied, rubbing his temples. The memories are coming back, confused, incomplete. The family matriarch slowly stood up and approached Tavi. Her eyes, the same gray-blue hue that characterized the Sterlings, intensely studied the younger woman. Then her gaze moved to the quintuplets, pausing especially on Aurora. Only a very special woman would receive that ring, Constance finally said. My mother made Alistair promise that it would remain in the family, passed down only to the woman the Sterling heir truly loved. Mother! Alistair seemed scandalized. Don't lend credence to this farce. Constance ignored her son. You still have the ring, girl? Tavi hesitated, then nodded. I could never bring myself to part with it, even in the hardest times. The matriarch turned to the quintuplets. Come here, children. Let me look at you properly. The five exchanged uncertain glances, then obeyed. Constance studied each face meticulously, occasionally touching a chin or a cheek, as if confirming the tangible reality of those beings. Ethan, Gabriel, Lucas, Theodore, and Aurora, she said, identifying each one correctly, to everyone's surprise. Ethan, you have an observant gaze, just like your grandfather when he was young. Gabriel, you have your great-grandmother's curiosity. Lucas, you talk like your father did as a child. Theodore, you have the analytical mind of your great-uncle Augustus. And finally, Aurora, you, little one, have the determination and courage that I myself once had, before this family broke me. The declaration caused a stunned silence in the room. Constance turned to her son, her gaze now hard as steel. What did you do, Alistair? It wasn't enough to manipulate my entire life. You had to do the same to your own son. I did what was necessary to protect this family, this empire. Alistair defended himself. Alex was throwing away his future for a crush 3 years. Alex's voice suddenly exploded. We were together for 3 years, Father. It wasn't a fling, a summer romance. I loved her. We planned a life together. The memories seemed to return in waves, increasingly vivid. I was going to resign from the company presidency. I wanted to start my own business, something smaller, more meaningful. And then you just disappeared, Tavi completed. Your cell phone off, your apartment empty, as if you had never existed. Alistair suddenly looked much older, the weight of his actions evident in his stooped shoulders. It was for your own good, Alex. You were destroying your future, throwing away everything we built for generations. Then admit it, Attorney James pressed. Admit that you deliberately separated your son from Octavia Rocha, and subsequently used his accident as an opportunity to manipulate his memories, effectively erasing her from his life. The patriarch didn't respond, but his silence was eloquent. He did more than that, Constance interjected, her voice filled with disgust. He denied 5 children the right to know their father, and a father the right to watch his children grow. The situation was rapidly spinning out of Alistair's control. Victoria, sensing the change in dynamics, attempted one last legal intervention. All of this is very emotional, but we need concrete proof. Official DNA tests, document verification. We can't just accept— Enough, Victoria, Alex interrupted. Look at them. Look at me. Do you need more proof than that? The events could have taken a more civilized course from there. DNA tests would be conducted. Agreements would be negotiated. The truth would be gradually restored. But fate, or perhaps human nature at its darkest, had other plans. In the weeks that followed the initial confrontation, the darkest side of the Sterling family emerged. While Alex struggled to recover his memories through intensive therapy, Alistair plotted behind the scenes. The official DNA test mysteriously disappeared from the lab. Documents began to surface suggesting that Tavi had been a former employee of the company, fired for misconduct. An actress named Fernanda Diaz suddenly appeared in the media, claiming to be Alex's ex-girlfriend and pregnant with his child. Journalists began receiving anonymous dossiers with compromising information about Tavi's past. Attorney James worked tirelessly to combat every new lie, every dirty tactic. The Quintuplets, instead of being frightened by the war they had started, seemed strengthened by it. Aurora, especially, became an impressive public figure. Articulate, serene, always ready with intelligent answers when approached by the press. "We are not afraid of the truth," she declared in an improvised interview when leaving school. "That's why the powerful fear children so much. We haven't learned to normalize lies yet." The phrase went viral, becoming a slogan on t-shirts, posters, and social media. Alex, meanwhile, was living his own personal hell. The returning memories brought not only the pain of the forced separation from Tavi, but the shame of the manipulations he had accepted over the years. How could he have been so weak? How could he have allowed his own identity to be rewritten? His relationship with the Quintuplets developed slowly, with supervised meetings arranged by Attorney James. The children, surprisingly, showed admirable patience and maturity, understanding that the man in front of them was, in a way, meeting them for the very first time. But the battle was far from over. One seemingly ordinary afternoon, Theodore, the most observant of the brothers, noticed an unfamiliar car parked near the school. When the driver made eye contact with him and quickly looked away, his instinct screamed in alarm. "Something's wrong," he murmured to Aurora. "That man is watching us." The Quintuplets had developed a code over the years, a method of communication they used when they needed to alert each other without adults noticing. Within minutes, everyone was aware of the possible threat. "Let's maintain the standard formation," Aurora decided. "Lucas and Gabriel in front, Ethan and Theodore on the sides, me in the back. If something happens, execute the protocol." The protocol was simple. Scream, film, run to public places, call the emergency number Mr. Robinson had configured on the cell phone they shared. They had barely left the school gate when the two men got out of the car, now accompanied by a woman. All three wore ordinary clothes, but something in their posture screamed professional. "Hello, children," the woman said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You are the little Sterlings, aren't you? We've come to pick up Theodore for a special meeting with his father." Aurora immediately activated the recording on the cell phone hidden in her jacket pocket. "Our father didn't mention any meeting today. It was a last-minute surprise," the man replied, taking a step forward. "Just Theodore today. Man-to-man business." The five instinctively backed away. "We're not going anywhere without our mother knowing," Theodore declared firmly. The woman's smile vanished. "We weren't asking, child." That's when the man grabbed Theodore's arm. In seconds, chaos erupted. Lucas began screaming at the top of his lungs while Gabriel ran back to the school gate yelling for help. Ethan threw himself against the man, trying to free his brother. Aurora, with incredible presence of mind, continued filming while shouting their exact location. The kidnapping was thwarted by the quick intervention of teachers and parents leaving the school. The two strangers fled, but not before Aurora managed to get a clear photo of their faces and the license plate. The incident was the final straw. When Alex learned of the kidnapping attempt, something inside him finally broke. All the doubts, all the confusion that still hovered over his partially recovered memories, gave way to a crystalline clarity. "It's over," he declared in an emergency meeting of the Sterling Global Holdings Board. "I am taking full control of the company today. My father is removed from all positions of power, effective immediately." The room erupted in protests, quickly silenced when Alex slammed a USB drive onto the table. "Here is all the evidence of the manipulation, the lies, the kidnapping attempts. If anyone wants to challenge my decision, feel free, But know that this content goes directly to the Attorney General's office and all major news media in the country. Dr. Philip Sterling, the medical uncle who had supervised Alex's therapy after the accident, stood up trembling. Alex, you need to understand. We did what we thought was best for you, for the family. Best? Alex laughed without humor. You tried to kidnap my son, threatened the mother of my children, manipulated my memories. That's not family. That's a criminal organization. That same night, Alex showed up at Tavi's small house in the Bronx. He was alone, without a driver or security guards. When she opened the door, surprised by his unannounced visit, he simply said, I remember everything. The first day we met, at the university where you were doing your practicals. Our first kiss in the park. How you laughed when I tried to cook and always burned the rice. Silent tears streamed down Tavi's face. Inside the house, the Quintuplets watched the scene through the crack in the bedroom door, holding their breath. I remember the day I proposed to you. How you cried and said I was crazy, that it would never work. And I said some craziness is worth it. Tavi completed, her voice choked with emotion. Alex took a step forward, taking her hands. 10 years were lost. 10 years I can never get back. I will never forgive myself for not being there. It wasn't your fault, Tavi replied, squeezing his hands. You were a victim too. Even so, I want you to know that I will do everything to make up for lost time, not just with material resources, but with love, presence, and unconditional support. That's when Aurora could no longer contain herself. She emerged from her hiding place, followed by her brothers, and ran to the door. You really remember everything, Dad? She asked, her blue eyes shining with hope. Alex looked at the five, an emotional smile lighting up his face. Not everything yet, but every day I remember a little more, and the most important part is already here. He touched his own chest. The love I feel for you, the certainty that you are my children, the immense pride in the strength and courage you have shown. That night marked the beginning of a new phase. It was not an instant happy ending. There were deep wounds to be healed, a decade of absence to make up for, a corporate empire to reform. But it was an honest start. In the months that followed, radical changes occurred. Tavi was finally able to complete her nursing degree with Alex's full support, who insisted she not abandon her dreams. The Quintuplets, now with access to quality education, constantly impressed their teachers with their natural intelligence and teamwork. Alistair Sterling was completely removed from the business, retreating to a remote family property. Victoria and Philip faced ethical proceedings in their respective professional colleges. Constance, the matriarch, surprisingly, became a fervent ally of Tavi and the children, as if trying to redeem decades of silent complicity with her son's manipulations. The story of the Rocha Sterling quintuplets captured the public's imagination. Aurora, with her precocious eloquence, became a symbol for children from marginalized communities, often invited to speak in public schools. The truth cannot be hidden, she would say in her impromptu speeches. Children are not a disgrace. Being poor is not a crime. The phrase eventually adorned t-shirts, posters, and even tattoos. Alex, fulfilling the promise he made years ago and then forgot, founded an organization dedicated to providing quality education and opportunities for young people from the periphery. He named it Aurora Foundation, in honor of the daughter who led the revolution in his life. When the quintuplets turned 10, a new celebration was held, not in the small Bronx apartment, but in the spacious garden of the house Alex had bought for Tavi, modest by Sterling standards, but large enough for 5 energetic children. Everyone who had helped along the way was present. Mrs. Elena with her colorful shawl, Mr. Robinson and Attorney James, the public school teachers who had always believed in the Five's potential, even some of the old neighbors from the Bronx. During the party, Alex called Tavi to a quiet corner of the garden, away from the guests. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. It's not the same ring, he explained, opening the box to reveal a delicate sapphire ring. That one had a special meaning for who we were. This one symbolizes who we have become. Tavi looked at the jewel with tear-filled eyes. Are you asking me to marry you again? I'm asking for a second chance, he replied, A chance to build what we planned 10 years ago, but now stronger, wiser, with 5 incredible reasons never to give up. Before she could answer, the quintuplets appeared behind them, obviously having spied on the entire scene. "Say yes, Mom," pleaded Lucas, always the most effusive. Technically, she never said no the first time, Theodore observed, pragmatic as ever. "So it would just be a confirmation, a formalization of what we already are," Gabriel agreed, nodding enthusiastically. "A family," Ethan simply completed. Aurora, looking at the ring in the box, looked up at her mother. Her gaze conveyed not only support for the decision, whatever it might be, but a deep respect for the path Tavi had traveled alone for so many years. "What do you want, Mom?" the girl asked. "That's what matters." Tavi looked at the 6 faces in front of her, the 5 children who had been her reason for living through the difficult years, and the man who, against all odds, had found his way back to them. The journey had been painful, full of seemingly insurmountable obstacles, but here they were, against all expectations. "Yes," she finally replied, a smile illuminating her face. "Yes to all of you." The quintuplets erupted in celebration, hugging the 2 adults in a chaos of arms and laughter. At the official launch of the Aurora Foundation 3 months later, Tavi surprised everyone with an announcement. In addition to serving as the head nurse for the health program for marginalized communities, she had been accepted into medical school. "It's never too late to start over," she declared to an emotional audience. "That's the most important lesson my children taught me." Aurora, now a minor celebrity, gave her first formal interview to a national magazine. When asked how she felt about the whole journey, from poverty in the Bronx to being recognized as a sterling heiress, the girl replied with her characteristic wisdom. "We were never truly poor. We had our mother's love, the solidarity of people like Mrs. Elena, the education our teachers diligently provided. Money is just a detail. What really matters is the courage to fight for what is right, even when everyone says it's impossible." The visibly moved reporter asked if Aurora held any resentment toward her grandfather and the family members who tried to prevent her recognition. "We don't waste time on resentment," the girl replied, after a reflective pause. "We prefer to build our future. But we also don't forget, because he who forgets history is doomed to repeat it." The cover story, titled "The 5 Against the Empire," How Children from the Periphery Challenged One of America's Most Powerful Families, became the best-selling edition of the magazine that year. In an ironic twist of fate, it was Alistair Sterling who suffered from the manipulation of his own memories in the following years. The patriarch, isolated on his rural property, gradually lost touch with reality. The guilt for what he had done, coupled with self-imposed solitude, took its toll. When Alex visited him for the last time, the old man barely recognized him. "He is no longer a threat," Alex recounted to Tavi after the visit. "Just a broken man, broken by his own greed. Still, we must be careful," she replied, always protective. "People can change, but they rarely change completely." Tavi and Alex's wedding took place on the same day as the quintuplets' 11th birthday, a double celebration that symbolized the intertwining of their histories. The ceremony, held in a community garden that the Aurora Foundation had restored in the outskirts of New York, brought together people from all walks of life, from homeless people Tavi had treated as a volunteer nurse to influential executives who now aligned with Sterling Global Holdings' new social vision. As a wedding gift, the quintuplets prepared a special surprise, a multimedia presentation documenting the family's entire journey. Theodore had programmed it, Gabriel researched the facts, Lucas wrote the script, Ethan created the illustrations, and Aurora narrated the story in her clear, confident voice. "This is not just the story of how we found our father," Aurora concluded the presentation. "It is the story of how an ordinary woman achieved the extraordinary simply by refusing to give up. It is the story of how 5 children discovered that the truth, when revealed with courage and intelligence, can tear down even the highest walls of injustice." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden when the presentation ended. Tavi, now officially Octavia Rocha Sterling, hugged her 5 children, amazed by the strength and wisdom they displayed. "You are the best of me," she whispered. "My greatest pride." "And mine too," Alex added, joining the embrace. "Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I didn't know who I was." The story of the Rocha Sterling quintuplets continued to inspire America in the years that followed. Aurora eventually followed her mother's footsteps into medicine, specializing in neurology with a focus on brain trauma, a choice clearly influenced by her father's history. Theodore revolutionized the family company's technology department, creating digital inclusion programs for peripheral communities. Lucas, with his natural gift for communication, became an award-winning documentarian, giving voice to stories similar to his own. Gabriel, always curious, dedicated himself to scientific research focused on sustainable solutions in marginalized communities. And Ethan, the quietest and most observant, found his voice through social architecture, redesigning urban spaces to promote integration and dignity. Together, they transformed not only their own lives, but began to slowly change the structures of power and privilege that had tried to keep them invisible. With every obstacle overcome, with every new achievement, they proved that a person's true worth lies not in their surname or bank account, but in the courage to face injustice and the determination to create a better world for all. Thus, the story that began with abandonment and despair transformed into a powerful testament that sometimes the greatest revolutions begin with the small, determined steps of those who refuse to accept that their place in the world be determined by others.